Hello.
Hello, hello. Give me 1 second. I'll share my screen. All right, cool. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, let me- that space. Mm, 15th. All right, and then oh, this is the template. Boop. But I already added you, so that's pretty nice. Okay, cool. Um, So I think the biggest thing that I wanted to talk about is because we started on the modeling language, but we didn't really, it looks like we hadn't really made too much progress on that. Um, so I'm wondering what we should do. So I guess my question is more along the lines of should we just try to make JSON schema work if we don't have the bandwidth to switch over to something like async API? Or what is your thoughts, Bernard? Because yeah, you're the primary person that's going to be working on this. However, I want to add um that
Ah,
I will be able to contribute code pretty soon. So I should be able to take a crack at this pretty quick.
Maybe it's in the previous notes. Um, why I the last time or maybe way before we discussed, I say before validating, I would like to do a full implementation of SDK based on async API for Rust at least, because I could
Hmm.
compare with the existing one. But since we have also some discussion about what is the purpose of SDK and what it should include.
Yeah.
Because we have this discussion, and also the the discussion led by Dalici about custom event, how SDK should support it, etc., etc.
Hmm.
And that the goals for our custom events, etc., could conflict completely, could be in conflict with what I would like to do originally with the code generation for SDK.
Hmm.
So it's also why on, I guess, on my last message on not on Slack, I don't
GitHub.
remember. I put a list. I made a release of the REST SDK maybe once months ago.
Hmm.
I list the feature that I include. Uh, Support version 03 and 04, by example, etc. So I provide a list of feature, and one one of our discussions say we should first agree on what SDK should provide.
Hmm.
It's also why I provide this list is as a starting point to say SDKs may should the SDK just be an implementation for context and using JSON? Should it validate? Should be type safe? It should be just be validation against JSON schema, download the JSON schema and validate against it. So
Hmm.
all of those stuff that we need to agree on block. I would not want to spend time on API in sync to create some maybe full generator for multi-language, but that doesn't match uh,
The
what we would
purpose.
like
Yeah, yeah.
to do. So
Yeah.
it's why I completely paused the work on it.
Okay.
And also, and about language, it's also the modeling language regarding support for custom schemas. There is also is the right way, because we, as we discussed previously, we say for the modeling language, it means one schema rule them all
Mm-hmm.
with the one version, and on the ticket you open, there is maybe some breaking change between splitting artifact and predicate and have a subtype of predicate, but it could be maybe next step. So some of these are on the ticket you created in the past, I
Mm-hmm.
think. So all the point. So there are some point to clarify before going into the code, in fact, just to clarify what is the goal of what we want to generate. We already removed, by example, the documentation generation from the single language, but it could
Mm-hmm.
go back again. Just to yes, for me it's to clarify and maybe the support for custom events. That could be
Yeah.
a big very that have an
Shift.
impact, a big
Yeah, yeah.
impact
Yeah, yeah.
on it. For
Yeah.
the Rust SDK, by example, it's why I made the last release to support custom event. I just say uh, I just put the for custom event the subject and predicate and all this part. The subject part is
Mm-hmm.
a raw JSON without any validation.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Makes sense.
So if we go maybe to create this app, this if we say, oh, what we will do is just to have this approach, we don't need to have a code generation because we have to create some class or structure just for context, and the rest is a JSON. And maybe we will say we will do a two-step. The SDK should not provide constraint on the data structure, but just provide maybe a parser and a validator and a
Well,
serializer.
it would provide a constraint, quote unquote, in that it would have like a base, like subject event. Like if you follow like an OO model, which isn't Go nor Rust, but if you follow like an OO model, like you would have like like a base subject event. And then, as long as things are adhering to that, then that would be valid, right? But the contract should be very, very flexible. And you can do that in Go, and I'm
Yes, but
sure, yeah.
a base subject event, if we just look at subject, is four fields:
4 fields, yes, yes.
ID, source,
Hmm.
types,
Type and
and
content,
content.
yeah.
Three of them are string without constraint,
Yep,
non-empty
yep.
string maybe on ID,
Hmm.
but not much. And for the content, it's a JSON object.
Yep, yep,
So if it's that, we could, if we agree on, we will always use this structure.
yep.
Maybe we don't need a generator from a schema. We just need
Yeah,
to handwrite those. Currently,
exactly.
the Rust SDK is made this way in reality. What is I completely hardcode context and subject,
Hmm.
but I extract from JSON schema only the content part,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I create some custom stuff to say, hey, the custom part,
Hmm.
the content part define the value of the type in the context because we have a constraint on this part. So when I did this work, I say I could, if we go to this way and stay, we will continue to have maybe multiple JSON schema,
Hmm.
maybe created or generated by what you propose, like pickle, to
Hmm.
to to enforce some rules.
Yeah, yeah.
I could I could make some customization on the Rust generator to generate its use template internally to generate the Java part for content, the Python part, etc., and the rest is handwritten. It's another approach in this case because if we stay um, with the JSON schema as today,
Hmm.
the value is maybe less breaking changes.
Hmm.
We continue to say, hey, we have one JSON schema per event type, event per yes, per type of event. Sorry.
Mhm.
But we could not use standard standard generator like async API with templates or etc. because we don't we are not don't follow the rules, and we will create our own maybe generator just to generate the content section in every every
Subject.
SDK
Yeah. 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 Um,
with
I'm
version, and we could validate also um, validate maybe agree on to validate everything. We download the conformance folder to validate the samples, to validate against the JSON schema.
mhm.
And maybe we could say, oh, a SDK should use the JSON schema. Maybe at runtime, we should, today it's not the case for the restaurant because he enforce the type, but we
Yeah,
could
the
say,
type. Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
we should download and the SDK should be, the approach could be to say, hey, the SDK will not enforce the structure of the content, but will download the JSON schema, manage a cache locally, and validate the content against the downloaded JSON schema, by example. It could
Yeah,
be a
yeah.
way.
No, no. I think there's definitely multiple ways of solving this. That's definitely one way. I'm actually very opinionated on SDKs. So I have a vision on how the SDKs should work. And unfortunately, they're very far. I mean, at least the Java and the Go one is very far from where what I was thinking in terms of like what like ideas that I had. So, like I said, in June, I will be able to do a complete refactor of both the Java and Go SDK. And I will take a crack at Rust, like what I mean is just kind of give you a high level of like how I kind of see it working. And then maybe we can have like an iteration before I start writing the Go and Java one. We'll do like a paired Rust one where me and you kind of like take a crack at like, like how this could potentially work. And then once we agree on the rules that each SDK can follow, we can then write a proposal for that in the implementation stage and then submit that and then write all the SDKs. So what do you
Yeah,
think about
yes.
that? Okay.
In my opinion, that before going into the code in June for Java, Go, or Rust, we should
Oh,
first agree on what are the feature property of a SDK.
yeah, yeah. And I think
What
this
is the
is
scope and the responsibility of the SDK?
Yeah, yeah. This is how I see it is just provide API support for CD event schemas, provide a good UX for users to send CD events, both core and custom, provide extensible interfaces like handle patterns to prep HTTP requests. This is also extensible, like that's like marshaling, serialization, deserialization. Like this is extensibility is like very, very important for any SDK. And then providing high level abstractions over low level generated generation of APIs and events. So what this means is when you typically generate code, it's like very, very low level. It's like either the raw, uh, oh, oh, my dog's about to throw up.
So,
Yeah. Give me 1 second, okay?
yeah, yes.
All right, sorry about that. Yeah, what was I saying? Okay, so yeah, so the kind of the goals is providing high level abstraction over low level generation of APIs and events. And what that means is generally generated code is very low level. It's like a simple HTTP request. And kind of like the models are very, very verbose. There's a lot of bootstrapping that users typically have to do if they're just using the low level generated code. So what SDKs typically do is they write higher level abstractions, whether that's builder patterns or other sort of clients. Like, for example, a good example of this is S3, right? So AWS S3 has high level clients called the S3 parallel clients, right? Like the multi-part clients that allow for faster uploads, right? That's not a S3 feature. That is a SDK feature. So that's what I mean by higher level abstractions is being able to
But
provide.
if in the case of S3, ah no, it's Smithy. Sorry, I think about Smithy.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah,
Confused.
different thing. But yeah. So it's just a matter of providing the best user experience. That's like the whole goal of an SDK is to make things easier for the user. And so if our users need custom events, we need to be able to provide ways of doing that. So that's why, like, when the SDK, all it comes down to is just make the user life easier. So I think just following those, I mean, there's probably more. I mean, this was just off the top of my head. Um, but I think once we start, the reason why I want to do a POC like with you, kind of like bounce some ideas, is one, I'm not good at Rust and I don't know the Rust limitations. And in addition to that, that will really highlight how we can word, things appropriately as well. Like, so we might have like, because like I gave you these 4 bullet points, right? And when we start, messing around with the Rust SDK as an idea, we can then give examples of what these things could be, right? So I think that's why we could start with like a POC. Like I said, it doesn't need to be a full SDK. We just start with a quick POC, get the foundation, and then kind of see how we can tweak the current SDK to make it look like this SDK or yeah.
Maybe before doing POC, as I mentioned, for those 4 points, but maybe on the chat I put the link to what I named the feature list, but in fact are the purpose of SDK for the Rust one,
Okay.
if you want to open. But so it's what I so it's the list that I put that could be used to define the scope of SDK. But we should maybe clarify each point what it's mean to provide high level API, etc. Maybe not with real code made by a POC or etc., but just by sample like how we imagine that the call could be. A little bit like TDD, I could say. It's how a user will use the high-level API, how it should use the low-level API if we have it in Go or in Java or in Rust, whatever, but
Mhm.
help to shape the scope. In this case, I say, by example, at the end, I say the SDK, how I test the validity of the SDK. We should add as the constraint that a valid SDK should use the conformance of every version or not, should use the JSON schema or not, etc. By example, it's not on the feature list I provide.
Oh,
You
sorry.
you
Yeah.
are on Amazon.
Yeah. I'm looking at, because my dog just threw up. I was going to I need to buy some medicine for him, so that's why it's like. But yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, you can, but it as it's recording, you share the information also.
Oh yeah. No worries.
So the in this case of the Rust SDK, to help me validate, by example, I use a lot property testing. I mean, I
Mhm.
generate random structure just by validate, and I validate everything that is generated, randomly generated, against the JSON schema. So it's how I validate that the type are correct. By examples, I validate that the serialization, deserialization works by using the conformance folder or example folder in the previous version, and I
Hmm.
read everything. I deserialize, move into the in-memory structure, and and then I serialize again, and I compare that they are identical, by example. So it's some points more uh, that we should clarify, I mean, by the SDK, just to shape it more with a finer granularity than just the bullet points that I have here, or maybe the four you put, and we could maybe clarify. So say, hey, SDK, maybe SDK should not need to support every version. It could be support only one version, and if someone want to use another version, he should use another a previous version of the SDK. By example, it's something we don't require that there is a multi-version support. It's something
Hmm.
that we could do. So there are a lot of all this kind of stuff. Maybe we could say, hey, this part is those features are mandatory for SDK and optional, and maybe providing a high-level API, it's an optional part. So
Okay.
we could this way.
Hmm.
We should at least agree on what is mandatory. Maybe the mandatory part is we want every SDK to download JSON schema and to validate a JSON to say it's a valid CD events or not. It could
Right,
be
right.
the minimal part.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is definitely like a good like set of features. Let me think.
So it's why I said before starting to code, we could just start an issue or discussion on GitHub and say what brainstorming all the point SDK can do, and then categorize them and say we want those one and how it could look from the user point of view in a pseudo Java code, pseudo Python code, pseudo Rust code to the language we are more familiar with.
Mhm,
And it could also be as you want to know more about Rust, and I want to know more about Go because
mhm.
it's a long time I didn't do it.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
it could be also the opportunity to say, hey, this syntax that you are using, can you explain me maybe a little bit or extra? A
Yeah,
completely
yeah.
asynchronous discussion, so we could do it, yes, on a
Okay.
GitHub issue or on Slack. I think it would be.
Yeah, yeah. I think we can make it we could I think we could probably just make it like a readme, like a maybe a readme for the SDKs or something like that. You know, just
Hmm,
kind of like
yes,
because like a GitHub issue is like the issue with that is like people would need to go find the issue and you know, especially if we like close it once it's done. So yeah, I think what I will do is I can work in tandem with you. I'll create like a feature list, like I said, those 4 bullet points, but it'll be more specific, so it'll kind of help make it look more like this. But my worry is I guess that's not a big deal because we're going to be missing stuff. Like this is, you know, might not have everything, right? So my worry is like we end up missing something. But I guess if we do this, it'll at least, you know, if we are missing something, it'll be like, oh, we missed that here. It was missing from this list. We can actually vet that and add it later. But okay, so yeah, let's start there then. I'll
yes.
spend some time. Yeah, what's up?
As you mentioned, maybe a better idea than the GitHub issue is, I guess we have maybe it's to start a PR with a blank page like SDK requirement
Hmm.
on the, maybe we have a repo, a SDK a repo, or we have a repo for the implementation SIG, I guess.
We do, yes.
So maybe start a Markdown page, and we will comment the PR on this page.
Yep, yep. I think that
Start
sounds
start start the PR with just the 4 bullet points, and
and go from there. Yeah, I like that.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's do that then. Let's make that the action item. Let me go back here then and make the action item um action item uh action items. Uh create a PR with the 4 bullet points for SDK feature list and goals.
I will put as comment. I will try to remember everything I said and put them
Yeah, no worries,
as
no
comment.
worries. Yeah, but this is good because what I can do too is because like a lot of we also have people internally using the SDK, so like we can send it out to them, and if they want to add anything, we can definitely do that, right? So I think this is really good, and there's a few other people we could send this out to, like Fidelity's one group of folks we can send this to get their opinions. To really improve the UX for the SDKs and potential features that may be missing. So yeah, okay, cool. I like that plan. So and then afterwards, what we can do is we can then, because like I said, like I think my biggest issue is just my lack of knowledge in Rust. And I think kind of like going through it from a rest perspective may help me understand to like maybe some of the patterns that I'm thinking. But like my thinking is if the pattern works for Go, works for C, and works for or works for C++, kind of for C, but you would have to do some really funky stuff. And it also works for like OO languages. It should probably work for Rust, but like I said, don't want to be um I don't want to make that promise without being, without you looking at it because I clearly don't know, right? So,
Yes, no worry. Why I say that we should clarify this point is I made very opinionated approach for the Rust one.
mhm.
Probably I will did the same approach for Java or Scala ones that I know also.
Okay.
It's to have a very um, very type driven. I don't want to manipulate JSON. I would like to not be able to create stuff that are wrong at compile times or at run times. So it's the approach, but it's a constraint that I put because in also it's but in Rust we could say, hey, we have a blob object, a JSON object. I could say
Mhm.
the SDK will just manipulate JSON object
Right, right, right.
without I will just validate the JSON schema as input and output. It's really an approach. It's why I say we should clarify so user of SDK, maybe they will not have the same API across all the SDK, but we could define some level of compliancy or standard for
Yeah,
the
I mean, the SDK should be as consistent as possible within their language paradigms and their like idiomatic, like make sure that they're idiomatic to the language. So what
yes.
that means is okay. So if you understood that, then that's perfect because like when I was on the SDKs team, like at AWS, like a lot of some, especially the newer folks didn't know that the importance of that. Because like if you're going from like the Java SDK and then going to the Go SDK, the AWS SDKs and APIs are very complicated. So now needing to learn a whole new SDK because they're so vastly different is a horrible user experience, right? So you want to make sure that they're as close as feasibly possible, right? Actually that's a good call out. Maybe that should be the fifth bullet point. Provide consistency without sacrificing idiomatic code and what was the other one I said?
Is idiomatic to the target
Language.
language ecosystem and not between SDK.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I spelled that right. Idiomatic. I don't even know. Okay. What was the other one? It was without idiomatic, and then there was another one. Okay, well, I think that's fine. If I remember it, then I'll put it in there. But this is like really important. Um, but yeah, because yeah, like you definitely don't want to do something that's like not of the language. Because for example, right, if you're a Java user, right, that's your primary language, right? You want to feel like you're writing Java code, right? You don't want to feel like someone from Rust wrote this SDK because that's a horrible experience, right? Because they're like, no other Java libraries like this. And then and a good example of this is like imagine like if all the Java like OO portions were just not used, right? Like that would be very anti-Java because Java loves OO. So yeah. Um, so yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Definitely we should always strive for this. And then also we should highlight, conformance tests because that's also going to play a huge part in this as well, right? Uh, test.
Yes, we should say what is a conform, how how to test the SDK.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. I think that makes a lot of sense. Was there anything else? Because I want to start this as soon as possible because I have a lot on my plate, and so I want to get this PR up and going. I'll probably try to get it out by Friday. So look out for that, and then we can then kind of like do a discussion on it and at the next SIG meeting on Monday if you're available.
Next Monday. I don't know for next Monday.
Okay, okay. Yeah,
I
let me know. And in the worst case, we can do it like the following week.
Yes. Yes. There is another topic I would like to
Sure, sure.
discuss. Just need to remember. Blah blah blah. Rest. So I don't. I forgot. So maybe next
Uh,
time.
yeah, yeah.
No.
And if you remember too, just let me know. And then if you have a topic, you can literally just copy this, add the date, and just put it in the action items, just in case, like so you don't forget. So you're more than you can absolutely do that.
Yes. No. It's not important.
Okay.
I will remember for the next time.
All right, sounds good. All right, David. If that's it, then let's call it. And I'm gonna start this proposal. It shouldn't be too large, but we can, like I said, it should just be these bullet points. But I'm gonna flush them out a little bit more. And then yeah, I'll look forward to the discussion there. All right.
Yes. Thank
All right.
you.
Awesome. I'll talk to you later. All right. See ya.
Bye.